Arnold Gesell was a theorist who passed away in 1961 and had helped pretty much change the thoughts of child development and turned it into a different, per se, process behind it, where instead of what many people consider it's nurture over nature, he went more in the viewpoint of it's nature over nurture. It's more hereditary of how a child is going to be brought up and how he's going to go about his life, and the way that he goes into the processes of the four different child development sections, whether it's physical, intellectual, social, or emotional. And he went on to research and do a lot of research at Yale University, where he was the director of the Clinic of Child Development, and that was from 1911 to 1948. But let's backtrack a little bit and also remember that he had started out somewhere totally different, where he had started out studying psychology, and this is where he ended up getting his interest in pretty much child development and the way a child grows up and the child's growth. He had started out as he started out at Clark University, and he studied underneath G. Stanley Hall, who he is a psychologist from way back then. Like, he is an older psychologist that studied child development also. So that kind of helped Gesell kind of get into what he wanted to end up researching and what he ended up putting his whole life towards. And he studied under Hall until he graduated from that college and ended up moving on to Yale, where he considered that he needed to study medicine also to pretty much help him understand and be able to put more research towards child development. So he not only had a degree in psychology, he ended up going and getting his MD at Yale University to help further his research with children. He also ended up becoming the first person to use a one-way mirror in his research with children, where he had pretty much built a dome-like structure where he would have the child inside the dome, and he could see in, and all of his other researchers that were with him, his team of researchers, could see in at what the child was doing and the things that they were doing, but they could not see him or the researchers. The children could not. So they were able to have this controlled environment to do their research in, where the children did not know about them and did not maybe do things a little differently or change the way they do things for the researchers. And that, I would say, that being a controlled environment just made it a lot easier to further his research, to be able to see, okay, well, this child did this and this child did that, or this and this, and it probably made him even believe more and more so that, okay, well, this definitely does look like a hereditary thing to me, that the way a child needs to get to a certain point or a process in their hereditary development, their just regular development, before they really develop in the four different stages of child development, before they develop more physically, where they're talking and running around and doing this and that, or they do more social, where they're just talking with others or communicating with their peers, or anything in that stage. And of course, emotional, the way they react to others, the way they react to mom or dad when they're in the room, or to other siblings or peers in the room, or the stage of intellectual, like how are they counting if they're older. And he made sure to touch on all ages. It wasn't just infants. It started out just being infants, but then he was like, well, I need to grow my research, expand my research. And he ended up conducting this one-way mirror research on almost 12,000 different children, before he ended up stopping his research. And he did it of all ages, from infant to school age. So he was able to kind of see, okay, well, it's not just infants. It's 4-year-olds, it's 2-year-olds, it's 3-year-olds, all ages, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and be able to see how they're learning. Like, how does that 6-year-old do his homework? It could have been them watching this child do his homework and asking for help, and whether he did or not, or how he completed his homework. He also came up with an idea when he saw a movie camera that he was able to videotape and look back on his research. And he was able to videotape without the child's knowledge, videotape what the child was doing and be able to look back on it and maybe they could have missed something in their research or didn't catch something the child had done. And the child, like I said, with it being a one-way mirror, the child didn't even know he was being videotaped, didn't even know what was going on. And I can't explain more into how I just can't believe how thought out he was with going into and doing a one-way mirror. It was not agreed upon in the society at the time of, well, I don't really like how he's putting these children in this dome thing in this one-way mirror. Many people disagreed with it, but he was able to take his research and run with it and go so much further than what he probably would have done if he had just done it regularly, where he just had a child come every day or watch a child 24/7 do things, and the child knew he was there and knew what he was doing. He was able to secretly see what the child was doing and how the child was doing it. And that one-way mirror just helped expand his research and helped him take his research so much farther. And I can't agree with him more on doing that one-way mirror method. And I like how even today, in today's society, people still do a one-way mirror. They do it all around the world for different researches. And I just think, he was the one who came up with that idea. And he not only, in child development, that's a huge reason for why I'm talking to you about him today. He not only made this method for child development, but he made this research method, that's now used in so many other types of research around the world, so many different scientific researches or methods on maybe how someone, it could be a child, it could not be a child, could have certain sicknesses, or they could have like ADHD, or they could be psychologically different in the head. And they're able to use this one-way mirror method to watch that person without that person knowing, and be able to research and write down notes, and the person's not changing their thoughts and their interactions because of them being watched, because they don't know it. And I can't push more and more on that one-way mirror method. That's what I think I love the most. But he didn't just do just that research, just that one-way mirror method. He did many other things. He helped write many different books on childcare that people still look at today in researching childcare, because we haven't finished researching child development. We haven't finished researching the way a child grows and develops. There's still many different theories. Like, it's Arnold Gesell's theory. It's not his, this is how a child develops. It's his theory on how a child develops. There's many other theories besides Arnold's theory. But I do like how his theory says nature over nurture, that a child is hereditary. It's okay, well, this child's parents were born and their parents were just like this growing up. And this child is going along a lot the way that their parents did. Or sometimes I know many people say that I react to, the way I react is a lot like the way my mother reacted growing up. And the way I act is a lot of the ways like my mother acted growing up. So I do take into the fact that it definitely can be hereditary. Like, I act a lot like my mother. I react to ways a lot like my mother. But I also have a little brother, And I don't know if it could be gender related, and I would love to get into that one day. But my brother is a lot like my father. My father can be a hothead. My father can get very angry very easily. My father could never sit still as a child. I still remember my grandmother to this day. My father stayed and he was constantly doing something until he fell asleep later that night, because that's how my father was. He could never sit still. Well, my brother, he was diagnosed. He has ADD. He has OCD. He can never sit still. He has to run, 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 run. It never stops. And I definitely do agree that that comes from my father. And my brother, he's a hothead just like my father. He gets angry so easily. Me and him constantly get into arguments because I'm sitting here, I'm like, Chris, I just don't want to argue. I just can't do this. But my brother, on the other hand, he's like, well, shut up. Like, he can't take it. Like, he gets so mad. And that's why I can't agree more with Gesell's theory of it has to be nature over nurture. It has to come from the parent. But you also have to remember that a child, they need to grow and they need to develop in their genes before they can go any further on physical, emotional, social, or intellectual needs and development into those 4 stages. They have to reach a certain point to where they really start to grow. And I want to say it's almost like it's like a tree. A tree starts out as a bulb, and the child is the bulb, the tree bulb. And then the child, as he grows, it's just a trunk. And it starts out just as like a little stick popping out of the ground. That's the child growing and having to get to a certain point in their nature before slowly they start to branch off, and all of a sudden leaves are coming out, and those leaves are the physical, emotional, intellectual, and social development for children. And I feel like that's how they slowly develop. They need to they start out small, but then they slowly will grow. But they have to reach a certain point in their growth before they really get into those 4 other stages. And that is my research on Arnold.